Section 7 consultation and the Farmland Protection and Policy Act. As a reminder, we are recording today's call and we'll be posting the recording and the slides to our website after this call. So here shortly, next slide, please, Rachel. Here shortly, we're going to hear from Grace Trankina from the Nebraska Field Office of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. She'll have a presentation and then a Q&A session. And then after that, we'll get into the Farmland Protection and Policy Act. If you want to make sure everybody's muted. And then we'll get into the Farmland Protection and Policy Act and the required review process. And then we'll end the call with a second TA call, or with a second Q&A session. If you have any questions, you can either put them in the chat or ask them during one of the sessions. Before we jump into it too much, I did want to go over the 3 E's of NEPA: exception, exemption, and exclusion. This can be really confusing. I find myself mixing them up even, so I wanted to go over it with everybody so that we're all on the same page. LEO and fixed wireless projects that are only attaching customer premise equipment qualify for an exemption. An exception is applied by specific agencies following the review process. An example of this is the exception that you can get after the FPPA review process that I'll talk about a little bit more here in a little bit. Categorical exclusions are granted by the NTIA office following filling out our form and then us submitting that form to NTIA. So if you do not qualify for a categorical exclusion, there is an additional review process that you'll have to go through, but we'll cross that bridge with you guys if you come to it. So if you have questions specifically about this, please just let us know. We've posted several resources to a new page on our website. And these resources will help guide you through the NEPA process in whole. So the subgrantee resources tab is located under the NB tab on our website. The page includes the NEPA and permitting questionnaire. Unfortunately, we're not able to give you guys access to the submittable form early. And so we have created a document with all of the questions. We could not showcase all of the branching that's in submittable, and so there's a lot of questions in the form that you might not have to answer in submittable depending on your project or the way you answer certain questions. Also posted there on the new page are the SOP guides that we've created for you. Those are also linked within the submittable form and the newly created document, so you can find those forms in a couple different ways. And then we've also created DPA environmental summaries. These will give you guys an inside look at some of the environmental and permitting challenges that you guys should consider during the planning and the review process. We have also posted last week's slides in the recording there, and we'll post this week's slides and recording there after the call. So you'll be able to find all of it in one place. Next slide, please, Rachel. NTIA collaborated with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to develop a list of activities that NTIA has determined will have no effect on listed species or designated critical habitats. Therefore, they don't require a Section 7 consultation. Subgrantees should consult Appendix A of the memo, which is found in submittable and on NTIA's website, to confirm that their activities are accepted from consultation. There are 6 categories of activities, including lighting up dark fiber. You will need to provide documentation to show that all of your activities fall under the definition of no effect. If your activities do not fall under that no effect list, you will need to complete the IPAC and the biological assessment process. This may include consultation with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife. On the bright side, NBO has worked with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to modify the biological assessment form. This will make it easier to complete and should result in faster approval. U.S. Fish and Wildlife have very limited staff, so please follow the guidance closely. On that note, I would like to welcome Grace Tranquina from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife. Thank you, Grace, for joining us. I'll let you take it over for a little bit.
Sure. Thanks, Amber. And thanks, everyone, for having me. I'm going to kind of go through what Amber was alluding to about the Section 7 process, should it be needed. So I'm Grace Tranquino with the Nebraska Ecological Services Field Office. Advanced slide, please. I think I just have a picture of Nebraska in the next one because Nebraska is awesome. And we're excited to have all of your projects getting started. And there's just a few things to keep in mind as we go through the endangered species process with our office. Advanced slide, please. So within the consultation request, should you have an activity that falls outside of those predetermined no effect activities, we'll request a consultation through our office be performed. So there's 4 key components when submitting a Section 7 request. And I'll kind of go through those in a broad swath, and we can address any questions about those specific components. So advanced slide, please. The first piece is an official species list. All of this can be generated through our IPAC, Information for Planning and Consultation tool. This is kind of the landing page where you submit an official project code. If you're just curious to test some things out, understand the process, play around with the tools, we have our beta site, which has a B in the link, and a bunch of, I guess you can't see my mouse, I'm like circling it on has that beta on our symbol, has a big banner that says like, you're in beta. We cannot access any of those. That is all for testing. You can generate as many projects as the heart desires as you're testing, but our office is unable to review those as like official projects. So just keep that in mind. If you submitted a project in beta, submitted with air quotes, it doesn't actually come to us. You have to submit it through the official IPAC website to generate a project. So advanced slide, please. Yeah, so to generate your official species list, next slide, I think I've got like the landing page. When you log into IPAC and create an account, it will look something like this. You can search your location. If you have a shapefile, you can drag and drop. I won't go into all of these details. Specifically, if you have questions on making a project, I find this portion to be a fairly straightforward tool, just like Google Maps or Google Earth or ArcGIS. In finding your project area. And then advanced slide, please. In thinking about what your project area is from the Section 7 standpoint, it's not just the footprint of the project, it's encompassing of the entire area of potential environmental impacts. So in this example, in this depiction graph, we have like the water quality impacts, which you guys won't have to worry about too much, but any other lighting or things like that, it's not just the shadow of the infrastructure, because we see that sometimes. So advanced slide, please. Once that's determined and you select that in IPAC, it will create a project. This is sort of what that landing page looks like. I'll go through just like a few key things. I know a lot of folks might be familiar with this tool, and I can answer more questions specifically, but in sort of a general overview today, I don't think we have to get into the weeds too much. Advanced slide, please. Yeah, so one of the important things to keep in mind here with big collaborative projects like this is that in your IPACT project, you can add members. This is really important because we want to, once a record for the project, for the IPACT project is created, we only want one record. We want one official record because then it kind of gets a little out of control on our end if the consultant submits one and the broadband office submits one and every federal agency starts submitting a project. It gets really difficult to keep track of on our end. So with one project code, you can add all of your members. All of the members are able to make changes, and so the collaborators are able to access the project, look at the documents that you've created in IPAC, and certify any consultation letters that are in there. So that's just a really key piece there. Advanced slide, please. Yeah, so the next piece is starting the review, actually generating the official species list in IPAC. If you follow this blue button, you're in pretty good shape. So, advanced slide, please. What does that look like? So in the review section, we have 4 steps. Our office only really needs the official species list and the determination keys. The other components of IPAC are optional. You can like build a BA in the tool, but we don't really recommend that, especially if we already have a template that's approved through NBO. So yeah, so here's your blue button again, request a species list. We can keep advancing through here pretty swimmingly. You get this letter that says all of the species that are in your project area that you will need to conduct Section 7 review and biological assessment on. It's somewhat of a lengthy letter, but there's a lot of information. Like Amber said, our office can be somewhat restricted from a staffing point of view to provide technical assistance. We've tried our best to really include as much information in the letter as possible regarding Nebraska specific resources, regarding other statutory authorities that you have to consider in your consultation with our office. So that's our little plover reminding us. Next slide, what do we got? Yeah, so that's the official species list. And the next piece would be any D keys. Advance. Let's see. And the D keys will just take you, once you generate your official species list letter, you go straight into the opportunity to fill out our D keys. The D keys are a questionnaire online. It's like a really mini version in here, but it's a series of yes or no questions that help streamline your consultation by answering some questions up front. By answering those questions, you can generate a determination for species if it's no effect or not likely. And then if it does not fall within that no effect or not likely, it'll pop out as it may affect. And I really encourage people, don't be too afraid of the may affect. That just means your project is a little bit more complicated than what our questionnaire could pin down, and you should probably contact us for consultation. So next slide. The D keys that are available and will probably be most useful to your projects and your offices. Our Nebraska statewide key is going to be available very soon. It's in beta for testing. We're going to publish that in the next month or so. That will be available probably as the time these projects are coming out. That's our general key that covers most of our listed species in Nebraska. Aside from the northern long-eared bat and tricolored bat, that's the bat range-wide D key that we have to consider if there's any tree clearing, any activities. If you're in the range of our listed bats, we recommend filling out that key. And same with the American burying beetle determination key. It has its own set of parameters and its own questionnaire where we're thinking about the soil disturbance, particularly in areas that the sandhills are. And I alluded to that as well. You might get a letter that says like your project may affect species, or I think that's somewhat concerning to folks at first. Really all it means is take all those documents and send them to us, and we'll start engaging in coordination one-on-one. Next slide, please. An important thing to keep in mind, once you've filled out the D keys, you'll generate a concurrence letter. And if all of your species are no effect or not likely. An important thing to consider is the way that you answer those questions in the DKey questionnaires commits you to those activities. So if you say, our office is avoiding tree clearing during this time of year, we are avoiding all noise disturbance or human disturbance within a half-mile whooping crates. There's all these kinds of questions. By answering those questions, you are committing to that conservation. And it's pretty straightforward, like in a bulleted list. By answering the DKey, you have committed yourself to the following, conservation measures, which the determination is contingent on. So be aware of that as you're submitting those documents. And it says that in the letter. I always recommend reading the letter as well. Great, so we've got that done. That's like halfway there to conducting your consultation. The next piece is the biological assessment, which sounds like you guys have like a template organized from what Amber was saying. So that's great. I think the next slide is just all the information that we look for in a biological assessment. So once you've generated the official species list, you've generated your DKeys, if you've determined already no effect or not likely, and they're all covered by the DKey and you have letters, you're set. If there's a species or a critical habitat that you've determined doesn't fall into the not likely or no effect, so maybe it's more on the may affect side, or that there's a few species and critical habitats that are not covered by the DKeys, you'll have to initiate Section 7 consultation. And that's done through creating a BA with just these few key components of description of the project, all of that good information that's on probably the template, and can just come in a document with a request for initiating Section 7 consultation. And next slide. A few things to keep in mind that I also included here. That's sort of our section for Endangered Species Act and Section 7 consultation for threatened and endangered species. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife does have a few other statutory authorities, including the Migratory Bird Treaty Act, Bald and Golden Eagle Protection Act, and Fish and Wildlife Coordination Act. Fish and Wildlife Coordination Act is more for water uses and fisheries, so I don't think that these projects will probably pertain to that as much. But I did include some information in here, next slide please, on migratory birds and bald and golden eagles. So particularly, it sounds like maybe the projects are more satellite and low Earth orbit projects, but for any power line infrastructure, I starred this too because we do look for implementing the risk mitigation for any power line hazards that are for migratory birds, and for vegetative removal. We do recommend avoiding the primary nesting season. In your official species list, it also has a list of birds of primary concern and their nesting ranges. So within the discretion of the project, we do recommend implementing those best practices. And this link is to our nationwide. It has a whole list of a bunch of different activities and the minimization measures that are associated with them. So next slide. For bald and golden eagles, if there are power lines involved, we do have incidental take permits for power lines. This is new part of the Eagle Rule that was implemented in 2024. It's a really straightforward permitting process that covers for any incidental take that may occur at power line infrastructure. And forgive me if there's not power line infrastructure in these projects, but I always find it really helpful to cover. People sort of forget about these extra fish and wildlife pieces. But if there's a nest, an eagle nest within vicinity of the activities, there's also eagle nest disturbance permits that include minimization and avoidance measures and a permit should any adverse impacts occur to the nest. And that's the email. Most of these slides have had our email, Nebraska ES, for any of the migratory bird permitting. That's our region's email, which is permits R6. So once we've got all of that information, the official species list, any DKey output from the IPAC system, your biological assessment, and any other supporting documents or assessments like maps or engineering plans, anything else that could be of use really helps streamline the process in our review time as well. So that package can be sent to our office inbox, which is nebraskaes at fws.gov. We manage that inbox about once a week, oftentimes more frequently than that. And it will likely be me. I will likely be the one who will be helping you through this process too. So I'm always available. I think my contact card is on the next slide. If you have any questions or anything as you're going through, oh yes, all of this information is also on our lovely field office webpage. This has been updated quite a bit. We're trying to pull the federal government out of the technological stone age a little bit with all these new tools and refreshing our webpage. So I'm pretty happy with this. All of the things I've said today are laid out in writing on our website as well. And so, yeah, if you have any questions or anything comes up as you start going through these projects, any nuances, I'm always available by email or by telephone as we start going through this process. So thank you all for your time and attention. I hope that this information was useful, and I look forward as we go into 2026 working together more. So I can take any questions if we have them now, but I'll stick on for the next presentation too. And if they come up at the end, I'm here.
Does anybody have any questions for her? I'm sure they will be knocking down your inbox soon, Grace. So
That's what we're here for.
Amber?
That's what we're here to do.
Well, there'll be another opportunity at the end of this if anybody has questions between now and then. So Amber, do you want to finish this out?
Before we jump into Farmland Protection and Policy Act, I did want to touch on some of the things that Grace mentioned. So, Grace, thank you. That was a great high-level overview of the tools and the process for U.S. Fish and Wildlife. She mentioned the templated stuff for the biological assessment. We do have that. There's certain languaging that we give you guys. Obviously, some of the stuff is going to be very project specific, so you will have to fill out those parts. But that templated language is in the SOP guides that I've mentioned a few times. So I really encourage you to make sure that you're looking at those and using that, especially when you're working with U.S. Fish and Wildlife. So when in doubt, check the guide or email the NBO office, and we'll make sure if we need to, we can pull Grace in as well. So thanks again, Grace. That was great. Now we'll jump into Farmland Protection and Policy Act. So non-exempt projects are required to comply with the reviews outlined in the FPPA. Land currently not being used for farming still is reviewed under the FPPA. The requirements consider the soil quality, not the current land use. So that's a really important designation to consider. The FPPA is intended to minimize the effects to prime and unique farmland. So prime farmland is land with the best combination of physical and chemical characteristics. Next slide, please, Rachel. Sorry. Prime farmland is land with the best combination of physical and chemical characteristics with minimal for production with minimal fuel, fertilizer, and pesticide. An example of this would be irrigated corn or soybeans. And unique farmland is defined as land other than prime farmland used for producing high-value food, fiber, and crops. An example of this would be like vineyards and orchards here in Nebraska. Unsurprising to anyone, there is a lot of prime and unique farmland in Nebraska. Almost all the NB projects will be affected by the FPPA. So to comply with that, you will need to consult with the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Natural Resources Conservation Service. You must work with the, next slide, Rachel. Okay. You must work with the state soil scientists for all of your projects. As outlined in the SOP guide, you will need to email them to begin the process. Make sure you include the acres of the conversion and the map or any information showing the footprint of that conversion. You should include PDFs, shape files, KMZ or KML files as well. For the consultation, we recommend that you be detailed with the information required and follow the guide from NBO. Incomplete or inadequate completion of the form will slow the project down. The NRCS has 30 days to begin the review process, and they're likely to have additional questions or clarifications during that process. Next slide, please. Once the NRCS has reviewed the project, they will decide if it qualifies for an exception. If an exception applies, you will receive a letter from the USDA and the NRCS stating why. If the exception does not apply, you will be provided with a preliminary USDA FPPA conversion form, either AD 1006 or CPA 106. You will be responsible for completing that form according to the included instructions and returning it to the NRCS. After you receive either the exception letter or the approved conversion form, consultation is complete. You will be required to include all documents of approval or communication with the NRCS in the submittable form. Next slide, please. We'll now head into the second Q&A session. I'll remind everybody, Grace is still here if you have questions about that. Rachel, is there anything in the chat to kick us off?
There is not. I will remind everybody we will make these slides. So if you're looking for those links, we'll make those slides available on that NBED website or section of the NBED's website. Words today.
Well, if
Don't
there's no
everybody
questions
raise their hand
today,
at once.
I was gonna say if there's no questions today, it's not a problem. I'm available. I'm here in the office, and as the consultation process begins, if you ever have any questions or need to coordinate in advance of submitting a consultation, or as we go through consultation process, just feel free to reach out to our office or myself. So thank you so much for hosting me.
We will. Thanks, Grace.
Thank you, Grace.
And we'll echo that. The NBO office is always available to answer any questions and such. And so if you have questions later on, our email is there at the bottom of this slide, nbo.admin@nebraska.gov. Give us a holler there and we'll get you connected with the right person. So thank you for attending today's call. We'll see you next week for a call about grants management.
Thanks, Amber. Bye-bye.